Welcome. It's episode 5. The Game of Thrones post reaction to episode 1 of season 8. Like, it's been 2 years in the making. I'm here with my best friend Eric.
Yo, what up?
He was here for the first episode, the first part of the Game of Thrones review, and just we talked about a lot. We talked a lot about what we wanted to see, what we think was going to happen, and
theories, conspiracy theories, basically.
Essentially, yeah, conspiracy theories. Now, what we've seen the episode. Yep. We've taken notes. We've really understood what's going on right now, and I think what's going on is that this episode was more about the introduction to Dany
in Winterfell.
Yeah, in Winterfell, and her
with Jon, with Jon welcoming her to the family. Basically, just saying, this is the North. This is where I'm from.
This is the North.
You guys see this. You need to talk to these people.
Mm-hmm. You
need to understand or make sure these guys will fight with you.
Yeah, and I think if we trail it back to the beginning credits of the episode, we see the hole in the wall.
Yeah.
We see that these little pieces fall like domino effects. They turn blue, exactly. These little pieces of white just turn blue in terms of the dead marching down to Winterfell, because we do know in episode 3 that's where the Battle of Winterfell is going to happen. The big battle between the dead and the living is going to take place. And at the end of the day, that's the biggest aspect of it. The emphasis on the crypts in the intro, the emphasis on the march. There's a lot of symbolism that takes place
in King's Landing, in the crypts. There's so much that kind of popped up that you don't see at all. And if you go back any season 1 through 7.
1 through 7.
They build up the houses, the castles, but they never go into it.
Yeah, they don't.
And that was totally different.
Mm-hmm.
We had to pause it about 3 or 4 times, go back and be like, hold on, what was that?
We literally waited a half an hour just to have the ability to talk and pause and discuss what's going on. And one of the things that kind of stood out was the emphasis on just the little things in the intro. Yeah, it's the march on Winterfell. It's the emphasis on the dragon crypts in King's Landing. Yeah. It's how they emphasize the throne and being not so big but important. Yeah. It's amazing how they illustrated how the throne is important, but it's not really that important because there's a bigger battle going on.
I felt like there was something in the intro. They wanted to emphasize on what this season is about.
Yeah, I agree.
The wall, the march. There's something in the crypts. We all know that.
The war.
Yeah, there's something in the crypts. We all know this. Then you go to King's Landing, because after the fight in the North, there's going to be a fight in King's Landing.
Yeah,
Cersei's not helping. She bought an army for
Cersei is the most southern part of this battle.
Yeah,
she's not moving. She's not going north. She's not going south. She's not moving.
She will be.
She's hell bent on taking and keeping King's Landing as her own.
So you got in King's Landing, they went into 2 rooms. The dragon lair, where the head of the dragons are.
Yeah, the bones.
They showed the arrow, that giant. I don't even know what the
ballista.
Yeah,
that's at this point
that looks directly at the dragon's head.
Yeah,
and then they went into the throne room and built up the throne.
I think it's a foreshadowing of what's going to happen. There's a change that's going to happen in,
which is totally different than any other season.
Yeah, because you really don't ever see a change in rulers.
Yeah.
especially in the opening intro. You see
Yeah.
the basics. You see the
They kinda
the
do
lion,
something
the
just like-
stag, and
You know what's another interesting thing?
what's up?
Every episode during the intro, when they show Winterfell, when they show King's Landing, when they show these places, they show the sigil.
He can't say words.
Guys,
We're just gonna continue because he can't say words.
The
Again,
sigil.
I've been the one who's drinking the most, but he can't say sigil.
The-
Continue,
okay.
sir.
The sigil sits on top,
Uh-huh.
just like that little cherry on top. They didn't show any sigils for any
But
house
let's-
except for Castle Rock.
No,
believe still had.
I disagree. I think in the intro, what you saw was a golden emphasis on certain sigils. So you saw the wolf, you saw the lion, you saw the dragon. They were all emphasizing gold, but the rings
yeah,
around the world of Game of Thrones were black, were pitch black. Like they were so dark as opposed to beginning seasons where they were burgundy, where they were light
it's kind of
steel, where
bright
there were
burgundy.
different colors.
Yeah.
But now it's just one singularity as just black.
When you look at it with it all, there's 3 houses left.
Yeah, at this point, there's 3 houses left. But it kind of goes into the beginning of the episode where you see Dany and Jon coming into Winterfell. You see the kid. There's a lot of similarities between the first
Season
episode of the
1,
show,
episode 1,
the
and
pilot
season 2,
episode, the
episode
pilot
1, yeah.
where Arya's running and Bran is running to see
Yeah,
who's coming into
Bran
Winterfell.
climbs the building, the castle to watch the Kingsguard come in.
And there's
You
that
have
shot of this kid. He's just running. He's trying to
Just like
see
Arya.
what's going
And
on
that's what Arya did.
in Winterfell, and then you see a brief glimpse at the Unsullied and how strong their shields look.
Yeah.
And you see Arya glance at this child who's climbed a tree,
Who's doing what she
who's
did.
run, who's
Literally doing
who's
what
not
she
only doing what she did, but doing what Bran did,
Yeah.
and
When he climbed the tree.
got an overall look of who's coming, how many people are coming, what this looks like, and what's important is that the ending is just as important as the beginning
Yo.
because it shows a great emphasis on
Yes.
what
The first episode.
everything just comes full circle.
Everything, yes.
You have a new man,
yeah.
you have a new child or who's a boy running, looking, examining
The
what's coming
beginning and
into Winterfell.
Very similar.
And what stood out to me is just the emphasis on the relationship between Dany and Sansa. It's like there's so many conversations that go on. There's just like she's the queen of the 7 kingdoms, but Sansa's the queen of Winterfell.
Yeah.
She's running things. She's in charge because
Lady Winterfell.
the king of the north, Jon, has already bent the knee to his lover, his
Queen.
queen, his aunt,
Aunt. Oh man.
his aunt,
His aunt. Yeah.
Dany, and it's just like we come into an episode where it's like fuck Jay-Z and Beyonce. We have a new power couple. It's Dany and Jon.
Yeah.
Or Dany and Aegon, to be honest. Like it's Daenerys and Aegon. Like we don't
He will always go by Jon.
no.
Yeah.
In my
He's not.
opinion, he's Aegon.
He is.
He's
yeah.
Aegon,
2
bro.
other people, most others. I think he doesn't reveal his name until.
He doesn't know his name yet, though.
Yes, he does.
And no. This goes into like the further parts where, I don't even want to get into it yet. I want to just continue on where we're at. Like it's so important that there's a struggle in power between Dany and Sansa, because Sansa's in charge of the North while Jon's away because he was proclaimed the king of the North.
Yep.
The little bear.
Yeah.
The little bear gave him.
She gave him shit. She would have been. No one else would have said that.
I agree.
At all.
I agree.
Not the
100%.
balls to say that.
She wouldn't have
got
said
up
that.
and said, "Who do you think you are?"
I agree.
This little girl is. If she dies, I'm gonna cry because hands down one of my favorites. Top 5.
It is. She's one of my favorite characters because she has no problem saying how she feels,
Anything.
and at a young age,
Yeah.
in a kingdom where everything's kind of up for grabs, where she's like a card Stark,
Even
and essentially.
that, no, she's a Mormont.
No. She's a Mormont, but she's under the umbrella house of Stark, where
Yeah.
she has to protect the North. She has to.
Yeah, she listens.
She has to do a certain
King
duty.
of the North. Yeah.
And it kind of is just. It's a shout to her pride and to her respect for her own house that she is willing to challenge Jon by saying, like, I don't even know who you are,
Yeah.
but we gave you this title as King of the
It's
North.
not even we gave you this title. She gave him that title. She stood up and she was the first one to stand up and say something and say, "This is my king," and that's why this little girl is so fucking amazing.
She is.
Because she speaks her mind, doesn't care. She's in a room full of men, 40, 50, 60 years old. She's the first one to call you out on your shit.
Yeah, she's strong.
She's probably, 11, 12 maybe? Crazy.
Gotta be.
Crazy.
But what's crazy is the shift in... We go from being in the North to being in the South, or the Mid-South, and going to King's Landing and seeing Cersei meet with Euron for the first time that he's back. And
you see the Golden Company.
yeah, you see the general for the Golden Company. The Golden Company finally has like a representative.
Yeah.
And it's this preppy looking, clean shaven,
Straight
like
up Jamie Lannister.
He looks like a bitch.
Made in Bravos.
Let's be honest. Yeah, exactly. He was made with a lot of money, and you see Euron kind of just looking for the woman aspect in Cersei.
He doesn't care to protect her. He doesn't care. He wants to fuck her. That's his thing.
He wants a piece of the queen because
he's like, this is a losing fight.
Yep.
I don't care.
He wants to assert himself as, the future king of all 7 kingdoms, and it's due to the blood magic. It's due to the navy that he has at his command, and it's due to the money that Cersei even borrowed from the Bank of Bravos, and how she essentially created a separate, company to battle against the people who were survived the battle against the dead. Like, Cersei still has her agenda.
Yeah.
Nobody knows it but Cersei. And I'm gonna be honest, maybe Euron doesn't even know. Maybe Tyrion kind of knows, but he doesn't really give a shit because he understands that there's a bigger battle at play.
I believe Tyrion made some type of deal with her.
I'm not going to know that until I know it.
Yeah.
I think what's at play is... I think the biggest thing at play is just Cersei. Like, for the first time, we see Cersei in a female role. Like, she's the queen. But all her life... And this is just me from reading the books, just knowing what the books have detailed. Cersei has always wanted to be a man. And it's really just assert herself as a ruler. Yeah. She's had her brother as Jaime the Kingslayer, the greatest swordsman to ever live at this point. Like, her father,
the greatest warmonger,
King Shit Lannister, who has the most money, who can back the most people. Yeah. It's just, she's always wanted to be recognized by her father as a ruler.
Not just Cersei, his daughter, who marries a king.
Exactly.
She wanted to have her own title.
Yep.
Her own name.
Her own kingdom.
Even Tyrion, even though he's just known as the Imp, but that's something that he had. Mm-hmm. That he wore gladly.
And
that was like the thing, like people always wanted to see him. Like when what's his name? From
Go ahead. Think about it, bro. I know you know
Martell.
the name. Martell.
Yes. When he came and he talked to Tyrion about, I want to see the Imp. I want to see... People came just to see Tyrion.
And we forget that when they were children, the Martells visited the Lannisters.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And Cersei proceeded to tell the Martells that
it wasn't her; it was the stories.
Yeah, it was
that
stories
he
of
knew. And she's just
Tyrion,
like,
that he
hey,
had a tail, that he had, you know,
had a
miscolored
claw,
eyes, that he was a monster, that he
had a
killed
giant head.
her mother. And what's important that we don't recognize is that, which I'm surprised they really didn't go into in the intro of the episode, like what previously happened, is the Valonqar prophecy, is because one of her brothers is going to kill her.
Yeah, that's true.
Another queen is going to precede her as the queen of the Seven Kingdoms,
But
as the ruler of the
like,
Seven Kingdoms.
I feel like we're going to get that in like they do the previously on. We're going to get that episode probably 4 or 5. Like
I'm gonna go 2.
It's going to be like, no, it's going to be the
I'm gonna go
episode
2,
that
man.
She probably dies. Either that.
So you think she dies towards the end?
4 or 5 is when Cersei dies. She doesn't.
Man.
She's not a. I don't think anyone else dies the final episode.
You know, I can agree because of the fact that I think there's going to be a lot in between of what Cersei does and what Dany does and how the Battle of Winterfell goes.
Yeah.
Like you see Jon preparing, you see Gendry making the weapons, you see Arya requesting certain weapons. Like you see, there's a big need for Dragonglass and the Hound and receiving his axe, and there's so much that goes into the actual Battle of Winterfell.
My thing is, like, I'm picturing the final episode. It's going to end.
We can't picture the first.
No,
we can't
the
picture the
final
final
episode,
episode now, bro.
How it ends.
We can't.
Summer
man.
begins. Straight up. That's how it's going to end. It's
You
just
think
the
so?
beginning of summer.
But I mean, to me, you know what's crazy? Like when they do the certain parts with Cersei and Euron, you see her kind of taking a role of a queen.
Yeah.
She's not in charge of the Seven Kingdoms anymore because she's only really in charge of King's Landing.
Yeah, there's not.
And when Euron returns with the General of the Golden Company, there's Euron like urging and begging for like that female need. He wants Cersei. He wants to take control of Cersei. He wants to be the king of the Seven Kingdoms. Yeah. He wants to make Cersei her.
He said, "I'm going to put a prince in your belly."
Exactly, and he wants to make Cersei her, like, be second place to his kingdom. Yeah. And what I'm feeling is that Cersei has to realize that she has to kind of take that role as a queen, not as a king.
I felt like the reason she turned around is that she realized that she needs allies.
Yeah, I agree.
Even 20,000 men that was brought, that's not enough.
It's not, and being that the fact that she doesn't have elephants,
yeah,
which she was counting on, and there's a scene where Euron is putting his pants back on and they're talking, and Cersei's drinking, and it's an emphasis to show that the child that she told Jaime about was a lie.
Or she lost him. And I felt like when he puts his hand on her stomach and says, "I'm going to put a prince in you."
And this is Euron, by the way.
Yeah. When she winced at it, at the thought, and as he left, she kind of, I felt like she started crying. And that was the moment
you saw the water in her eyes, and
she lost her child. That's what I felt like that happened. She's not going to bear any more kids because of the prophecy.
And there's a return to how she felt when she was with,
Robert.
When she was with Robert.
When she lost her first.
She didn't love Robert. And she felt as though, like, according to the books and according to many theories, she thought she was going to be the queen to Rhaegar. She thought she was going to be the next big thing, and she wasn't. She had to settle for Rhaegar. For Robert and his rebellion, and she had to settle for just a placeholder position. And it shows how much of a character developed in Cersei and how she went from this just, I'm going to be okay with you, having sex with so many different whores and not breeding my children and me having to have sex with my brother because he was more important in my life, to the woman and the queen and the tyrant she's become as a person.
Yeah.
It's such an emphasis on her character development because Euron he doesn't really have a position. He's in charge of the Navy, but he wants to be the king. But at the end of the day, the Mountain is going to protect her regardless of what's going to happen. And the Mountain has no issue killing anyone. Regardless of who it is.
Nope.
To protect her queendom and what she feels as though her right is to run the kingdom, because even when Joffrey was king, she was the queen regent.
Yeah.
You know, she kind of pulled the strings of Joffrey,
Yeah.
even though Joffrey was the maniacal spawn of her and her brother, and his insanity developed because he has too many chromosomes that coincide with her mother and his mother and his father.
And that's something that they talk about with the Targaryens, because they
Yep,
also bred
the inbreeding.
Yeah, and that's what made the Mad King. It was through that. And then you think about Joffrey basically looking like the Mad King, the way he was insane and crazy and just screwed all the way in the head.
And what's a beautiful, recollection of what's going on in terms of, the struggle of who's going to be king is Cersei kind of playing her womanly duty and, betting Euron and giving Euron the kind of security that he needs to know that, hey, I'm going to run the Seven Kingdoms when it's my time. But Cersei knows that when you give me a win, when you give me an army, you can have me.
Yeah.
That's big, because she's always been so hell-bent on Jaime is my king, Jaime is my everything. Like, I live and breathe for my brother, my twin, my person that I shared the womb with. It's so important to show that she's willing to give herself up for a win. She's willing to give herself up to secure herself as the queen, because at the end of the day, the Valonqar prophecy is that a younger, more beautiful queen will take her place as queen of the Seven Kingdoms.
And right now, that's Dany.
Yeah, we're looking at
It's
Dany.
the last person she even thought. She was afraid of Sansa. She was afraid of Marjorie. But no, the real threat was over on the other side of the Narrow Sea.
Yep.
That was Dany. And now she's on the right side. And she's ready to take over.
And one thing that kind of stood out to me is that you see Dany and Jon ride dragons together, because Jon has Targaryen blood. We find out that, his real name's Aegon, and he's the son of Lyanna and Rhaegar, and how their bond as husband and wife it blossomed into the true heir of the kingdom. And there's a scene where they're by a waterfall, and Jon is looking at Dany.
So about that waterfall.
About it.
That is where they found what are they called? The wolves. That's where they found the wolves.
That is.
It is.
And that's where Jon even hunted.
Yeah.
As a young man, and it shows that there was a certain look in Dany's eyes where she becomes more feminine. She's not a ruler anymore. She's a woman.
Yeah.
And she's in love again.
You feel like that again, yeah, because she found love.
And being that everyone was harping on the prince that was promised, and Rhaegal being her son, between her and the Call of Calls, the king of kings, Khal Drogo, they were going to produce this son. And at the end of season 1, where, the dragons are born, and she gives up her love and her appreciation for her future to bear these 3 dragons. She can't have kids. There's blood magic. There's so much stuff that's involved. And she looks at Jon, and she gives him a really human look. She doesn't look like a queen. She doesn't look like a Targaryen. She looks like just a person. She looks human for a second.
Yeah.
And they share a kiss, and they look at the dragons, and the dragons accept Jon for who he is, which is a man of Targaryen descent.
I felt like they were still like back off. Like,
They were.
Drogon
Drogon was back off. Yeah.
Like you heard her. You're going to be red hot real soon. But like even they went back. She was like, "Don't be afraid." Like back to kissing. He opened up his eyes. The dragons are staring. They're just like, "Make a move. Make a move."
There's a beauty in just Rhaegar's son riding Rhaegal, the dragon.
Yeah.
Like, she specifically named him Rhaegal because that was her older brother. And her older brother gave birth to her lover, to her nephew, to Jon, to Aegon Targaryen, the rightful ruler of the Seven Kingdoms. And there's an irony in Rhaegar's son riding Rhaegal the dragon.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful symmetry to show that they may not know together that who they really are, but there's a beauty in the fact that Jon has the ability to even ride a dragon.
Yeah.
And Jon is strong enough to take on that responsibility.
Yeah. It's a great scene. With through the waterfall, it kind of showed the beauty. Even him flying. I thought at one point he was gonna fall off. Honestly,
yeah, it got kind of nervous.
I feel like it's one of those movie moments where they fall off, but then the dragon comes and scoops them. Yeah. One of those moments, but it wasn't having that. But that was a really good moment for Jon to really learn what he's getting himself into with loving this girl. She has these two dragons that love her very much, and you have to kind of back off. It's something you have to kind of warn yourself and understand hey, these things will kill you in a second. If she asks of it,
they eat what they want.
So when you think about it, she has her own mountain with the dragons. How we talked about Cersei with the mountain. That's how Dany has her dragons to do just the same thing, with no question asked. And being as they're dragons, they can't ask a question.
Yeah, I think it kind of all bleeds into the struggle of Dany's presence in Winterfell and how Sansa is. She's essentially running Winterfell, but now that Dany's in the picture and she's like the queen of queens and the queen that's the rightful heir to the Seven Kingdoms, there's a struggle. There's an anger you see out of Sansa that you haven't really seen since her father died.
No, since she was last with Cersei.
Yeah.
She looks at her like that. Because remember, the last queen she talked to, she dealt with, didn't like her at all. Didn't want her around. Didn't care for her at all. Nothing. And that's I think that's a fear of hers. It's just bringing back that memory of being with a queen, pretty much. That's just being a lady at the time. You're currently, she's not as high of a level as she was previously when Dany wasn't around. But now that she's around, she wants to have that power, and it's just it's not working out for her, and she knows the dangers.
Yeah, I think Sansa kind of wants to take a position as I'm going to be the dictator as to what Jon does, as to how we move forward with this upcoming battle. But there's always going to be that overlooming factor of, well, who's going to be in charge of Seven Kingdoms?
Yeah.
What's going to be the aftermath of this battle? Who's going to be in charge? And
that's the thing. It's
that's where the tension kind of breeds between her and Dany.
It's so unimportant, basically. And that's what Jon is trying to push into everyone's head. Who gives a shit? We have these guys marching down, trying to kill us. We need to stop this. Who cares? What the Onion Knight said back in season 7. Who cares who corpse sits on the throne? There's another danger. no one. John is one person that just don't care at all about that.
I think, John is noticing that, there's a bigger battle going on. It's not who has the seven kingdoms, it's who can stay alive.
Yeah.
And I think that there's going to be a growing emphasis in the next couple episodes of who is going to be in charge, who's going to be the king shit of Turd Mountain as the battle for Winterfell continues.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. We still got a little bit of while a ways to the battle of Winterfell. Since we all know it's episode 3. It kind of sucks that they spoiled that, to be honest, because there's always that excitement. You didn't know about the Battle of the Bastards before you even saw the first episode of the season. But that was one of the greatest episodes of Game of Thrones, in my opinion.
And that's where I'm going to kind of leave you guys, because not like this episode isn't ending, but like I'm saying, like in terms of Game of Thrones reviews, we're kind of wrapping up. The first episode was absolutely amazing in how it linked the last season with the current season, and there really isn't going to be much continued explanation, in my opinion. Like there's going to be, from episode 2 on, it's going to be what's moving forward. Like we saw in the teaser, Arya essentially like ran for her life in terms of whatever's happening at Winterfell, the Battle of Winterfell, the essentially the battle for the North. It's intense. It's going to be an intense couple of episodes. It's going to be an intense rest of the season, and I'm very happy that we've saw so much in such a little time. You see Dany and Sansa battle. You see Cersei and her battle for womanhood versus her battle for wanting to be, a ruler. You see Jaime ending the first episode with his first view of Bran. And Bran is being the three-eyed raven, the new three-eyed raven, and he knows what Jaime did to him. He lived through it. He grew up in it. He lost his ability to be a knight, to be the person he wanted to be. But, now Jaime has to see the consequences of his actions. But at the end of the day, now Bran can fly. Bran has climbed. Bran has always wanted to be this person who he wanted to be, this knight, this protector of the realms of Winterfell, and now he's just the three-eyed raven.
But it's deeper than that,
It
is
is
more to that job than what he knows now. And he's freaking, I don't know. He's very emotionalist. I feel like we'll see what happens next with him.
I agree. I think that them ending the episode on Jaime and Bran's meeting and just seeing how Jaime looked at Bran in shock and awe.
He knew who he was.
Exactly. Like he saw the man that Bran become in just that short window of looking at him. It was something that shocked Jaime. It was something that made him regret his choices because...
Well, he's different now.
Yeah, he's gone through a metamorphosis of being a Kingslayer into being a noble knight again.
Yeah.
Into being someone who wants to fight for life instead of fighting for Cersei. He's become a knight again instead of becoming a prince or becoming a member of the Kingsguard. He's just Jaime Lannister. Yeah. And I think that is the biggest fear that he has when looking into Bran as the episode kind of turns to black. It's
who he was before.
Exactly.
It kind of reminds him who he was and how he doesn't like.
He has to come to grips with who he is as a person and who he has become. And I think
that's going to be the biggest segue going in. It's just them understanding, Jaime's here. They need to know who he really is, because Tyrion has no clue. He knows, he hasn't seen him in, I don't know, years maybe, and most other characters don't really know who Jaime is outside of maybe Brienne. So they have to really see, okay, this is Jaime Lannister, the guy who tossed my brother out the window, the guy who attacked my father at the in King's Landing, and all of these other things. So they have to see. It's going to be he's most likely on trial. Have to kind of speak his truths. He's going to tell them what happened, what he did, and who he became. And that's going to be like the biggest point of the next episode, in my opinion, is Jaime Lannister.
I think it was a fitting ending to the episode, a fitting ending to who Jaime is as a character, a fitting ending to what's to come. And I think that's the biggest part of this episode, is what comes next. The beginning of the most of the episode, it just shows what we missed over, the transition from season 7 to season 8, and it ends with the future. It ends with what's to come. I want to congratulate these authors and these executive producers and George R.R. Martin for what.
I give it up to the writers, honestly, more than George R.R. Martin. Okay. Because he can plant the seed, but they have to actually write this.
They have to execute it.
They have to, you can get a summary, but you have to fill in the lines in between. Mm-hmm. So give it up to the writers. Honestly, they're doing a fantastic job with what they have and what they didn't expect to have, 8-10 years ago when they first started the show. Because they expected the books to be done and just to go off the books and boom, have the show. But nah, they had to start writing themselves.
As in most interviews have ended with the writers, there's going to be a bittersweet ending. My hope is that my tattoo stands the test of time, and my Targaryen sigil on my forearm just shows that there's going to be a winner to the end of the battle between living and the dead, and that Dany kind of reclaims what was rightfully hers. And at this point, even if Jon reclaims what is rightfully his, even though it's unbeknownst to his own being as a person that he's a Targaryen, that he was confused about being a Stark, I think it's going to be a fitting ending to the show. I don't think we're going to see an ending that's upsetting. I don't think the White Walkers are going to win. Yeah. I think if we look at the episodes and the episode titles, episode 3 is the Battle of the Winterfell. I think that's going to be the biggest battle of the episode. I don't think it drags on. Yeah, I don't think it drags on past the Battle of Winterfell. I think
that is the longest episode of the show.
The episode, yeah. I think either the living wins or the dead wins, and we see just the repercussions of it in the last 3 episodes. As we draw an end to episode 5 of My 2 Cents, I think the consensus that me and Eric have are there has to be a fitting end. Whether it's the living or the dead, someone has to win.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Night King or whether it's the king and the rightful king in the north, the rightful king to the 7 Anvils, the rightful king in the north, the rightful king to the 7 kingdoms, which is Jon or Aegon, or whichever way you want to address him as, there has to be a fitting ending with one ruler. There can't be a battle, there can't be a question, there can't be a cliffhanger. There's going to be an ending. And I think that ending comes after episode 3. And I want to thank everyone who's given me a view or followed the Instagram or, become a subscriber on the YouTube. There's a fitting ending at the end of this all. Whether it's my podcast or whether it's the ending of Game of Thrones, There's one solitary host. There's one solitary king. And I think that regardless of what happens, come the ending of this show or come the ending of this podcast, that you guys as fans, you guys as followers, you guys as an audience understand the importance and the relevancy and the symbolism that there's a light and a dark in life and in death. And you have to choose your path. Just like Jon did, just like Daenerys did, just like Cersei did. There's always an ending. And the ending is that you got to pick which way you're going to end. And that's what makes you your character. So I want to thank you for listening, for giving me this opportunity, for giving me this time in your day to really just go into a little bit of depth of what this episode was and what this episode represents. Episode 6 is not going to be about Game of Thrones. I can't keep continuing about this because I'll go crazy. I want to thank you for following, for reposting, for liking, for sharing this episode for what it is and this podcast for what it is. It's my 2 cents. It's my guest 2 cents. It's everything and what I can and have in my head. So thank you. I appreciate you. Like, share, subscribe. At my 2 cents on Instagram. At my 2 cents pod on YouTube. Just follow, like, and share. I appreciate everything you do. Thank you for giving me this window of opportunity, and I want you to have a good day and a good night. I'm out. Stay safe, guys.